Good morning. Day 2 of Husband in Pursuit. Loving my wife well. Seeing her as Christ sees her. While we were still weak, at the right time Christ died for the ungodly. For one will scarcely die for a righteous person, though perhaps for a good person one would dare even to die. But God shows his love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Romans 5, verses 6 through 8. Again, this is all someone else's writing. It's a devotional with application at the end, which I do separately. But sharing the devotional day by day. Our church recently held baptisms during a Sunday gathering. 2 8-year-old kids had decided to publicly declare their faith in Christ. As our pastor introduced each one, he gave them a chance to read a verse that they felt influenced their lives. As the children read their verses, my mind wandered. I longed for and dreamed of the day I'd get to see my 2 daughters publicly share their decisions to follow Christ. Tears filled my eyes, and a knot formed in the back of my throat. My daydream continued. I began to envision them as teenagers, then as young women. I imagined them introducing me to boys they liked. As it stands, I doubt if any will be good enough for either of them. Eventually, I began to wonder what kind of men each of my daughters would marry. Would their future husbands treat them well? Would they speak to them kindly, gently, and lovingly? Would they respect my daughters and treasure them as I do? Would they lead and love them sacrificially as Christ loved his bride, the church? Then I felt convicted as my questioning turned inward. Do I respect and treasure my wife as God does? Do I speak to her kindly, gently, and lovingly? Do I pursue her as he does? The conviction was deep, and it still feels fresh as I write this. It's sobering to think of your bride as a daughter of God. Yes, in Christ, you are also adopted into God's family and called a son, but have you ever thought of yourself as God's son-in-law? I can't help but picture him standing at the front door, shotgun in hand, warning me to have his baby girl home by or before 10 p.m. This sounds ridiculous, but perhaps it's a useful image to remind you that your wife is God's precious daughter. One of the mixed blessings of marriage is familiarity. Tough one to say. I say mixed because there are 2 different sides of the same coin. On one side, you can be closer and more vulnerable with your wife than with any other person. On the other side, you can grow too familiar and get lazy with each other. I'm not just talking about using the bathroom with the door open or forgetting common courtesies once practiced while dating. Side note, it's a good idea to maintain a healthy amount of decorum in your marriage out of mutual respect. The biggest downside to I'm struggling on this one today. Familiarity is forgetfulness. Forgetting what makes your wife remarkable, forgetting why you are drawn to her in the first place, and forgetting just how special she is in God's eyes. We can learn the most about familiarity from looking at the way God treats it. No one is more familiar with you than God. He knitted you together in your mother's womb, Psalm 139:13. He knows the number of hairs on your head, Luke 12:7. And he knows exactly what you do, think, say, and intend every moment of every day, Psalm 139, verse 2. Nothing about you is a mystery or a surprise to God, yet he loves. He forgives, and despite how much you neglect him, he is ready to meet you wherever you are and pour out everything he promises without delay. In Christ, you have all the benefits of familiarity, and none of the drawbacks. That's what it means to be called son. That's the good news of the gospel. Experiencing the truth of the gospel will forever change how you view your wife. Christ views her with the same loving, long-suffering, patient, and kind eyes with which he views you. He adores her. She is his little girl, all grown up. He knew her in the womb, designed her in his image, and entrusted her into your care. Your bride is God's daughter first, and your wife second. Remember to treasure her as God does, and love her as Christ loved the church.